at the Democratic Labour Party headquarters and those who are viewing with us on our social media platforms. Good afternoon to you. Before we commence, I would invite Adrian Bascom to invoke God's blessings on the proceedings.
Pleasant good afternoon. Let's bow in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you yet for another week and another day that we have lived to see your name and hear your grace. Lord, I ask you to bless those who that may be on their way. Continue to bless our president and our great party and all of our candidates and all of our members and party followers. Lord, touch this country, Lord God. Lord God, I ask you to help the people to open their eyes and see you not only as a creator, but the one that is the creator. Heavenly Father, touch those that may be sick in their homes, those with this dreaded virus. Only you can remove this, Lord God. Bless the speaker, Comrade Derek Alleyne, Lord God. May you bless his words, Lord God. Bless the presenters. Touch everyone here, Lord God, in and out and all around this surrounding area in George Street. And ask you this in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, thank you very much, Adrian. I want to welcome all of you again, and of course, the reintroduction of the Astor B. Watts series of lectures, afternoon lunchtime lectures. And we have with us, of course, a distinguished person to deliver that lecture, and to introduce that person, I invite our comrade, Adrian Bratter, for the introduction.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, comrades. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our featured speaker this afternoon, Dr. Derek Alleyne, who is a very good friend of mine and comrade. But more importantly, Derek, for the last 50 years plus, has been working tirelessly on behalf of the people of Barbados in different capacities. As a youth leader, Derek was known for his activism. He was known for his involvement in sports, whatever was required to move the youth, in particular the youth of St. Michael, into more central and more, or what should I say, civilized activity. I don't mean civilized in a derogatory, and I meant in terms of positive. As a trade unionist, we know Derek's worked for very many years as a trade unionist. As a member of the Democratic Party, Derek's work and commitment to this party is unparalleled. As I said, it started over 50 years ago. And we as a party sometimes take for granted the talent of the people that we have. And Derek is more than equipped to deliver this afternoon's lecture, Our Political Party is Still Relevant. Because we see on Facebook from time to time people asking, why do we have political parties? All the politicians are one. Why do we need political questions this afternoon? But I know he will answer these questions this afternoon. But more importantly, given where we are in the juncture of our history, will demonstrate why Barbados needs the Democratic Labour Party as a vibrant political party. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join with me and welcome Dr. Derek Alleyne.
Good evening, comrades, comrade president, distinguished candidates, former candidates, and members of parliament, brothers and sisters, comrades. Thank you very much. When I asked Adriel to do the introduction, I did it with some fear. Because when we introduce each other, there's always some fun between the words that we say. The famous introduction, we did something for Clifton, our friend, and almost called friendship to break up. very I have heard people I consider Barbadians express the view that they will ever political party. I want to say outstanding contributions, no matter the size of it, to the development of Barbados. Of course, the question then is why would people make that comment? And the responses that I got to the question of why was, I don't want to be labeled B, D, or N. I want to be an independent. I believe there's no difference between the parties. I even heard you don't have to be a member to make a contribution. And sometimes I hear it's about the party leadership. It's about the direction the party is going. And then they say, and even if they show a glimpse of ideology, they are often changing it. So I decided to do some work on political parties and ask myself, if political parties did not exist, what would happen to our democracy? So I borrowed a few texts from some very famous authors, and I will give you the names as I go along with it, and list all of them now. But Paul Webb, in an article, at most, a prima facie case can be made. Paul Webb, in an article, Are British Political Parties in Decline? He contended that, and I quote, at most, a prima facie case can be made that the popular legitimacy of parties may be dwindling. Similarly, party organizations only appear weaker than they were a generation ago at the local level. And even this may be a somewhat simplistic account of the real strengths and weaknesses of British political parties. If we turn to a deeper level of analysis, we must concede that the capacity of parties to fulfill functions on behalf of the wider political system may not be what it once was. Nevertheless, they remain central to the task of demand aggregation and political recruitment. In short, he said, political parties in the United Kingdom may have their problems, but they remain much more than a vestigial phenomena of a bygone era. He further states, it is because to a significant extent, political parties undoubtedly have the capacity to adapt to changing environments. That was Webb, and the point he's simply making that political parties keep adjusting to the climate and the environment in which they operate. The political system literature points to the 18th century as the birth of political party. The literature identifies Sweden with its caps and hats as the early evidence of partisan political contests. In the 19th century, political parties blossomed in Great Britain. The phenomenon emerged in the 1900s following the granting of the franchise in between 1885 and 1980. It was not one piece of legislation, but several amendments between 1885 and 1980. The United States had already seen political parties emerge in an ongoing battle between what was called direct democracy and democracy through political parties. Prior to that period, democracies, example, the Greek polis, Swiss cantons, or the Italian city-states, all function without political parties. Once political parties emerge, they have entrenched themselves and have legislated carefully tailored laws that have repeatedly changed their internal organizational structure and external relations with followers and voters to remain critical to the political process. Peter Meyer and Richard Katz argued that what they call cartel parties are the latest stage in a process of institutional evolution that began with the parties of the notables in the 18th century. You see, they got no things called cartels. We will touch a little bit on that. Before calling anybody, this is what we talk about cartel. Parties that, sorry. These were followed by mass class-based parties that emerged toward the end of the 19th century, and then the catch-all parties that came to dominate the last half of the 20th century. For the purpose of making a case for the retention of the party system in Barbados, I adopt our term of a political party. And I quote, any political group identified by an official label that presents at elections and is capable of placing through election candidates for public office I can expand that definition to contain that parties, and I quote it again, can therefore be understood as a permanent association of citizens that are based on free membership and a program which are anxious to occupy through the path of elections the political decisive positions of the country with a team of leaders in order to materialize suggestions for resolving outstanding problems. That's mouthful. Fernanda Castle-Bartow in Political Science, Party Systems, Assessing the Myth of Institutionalization and Democracy, explained that for a party system to be considered institutionalized, it must reflect one, regular patterns of inter-party competition, strong party groups in society, electoral and partisan legitimacy, and solid party organizations. Those criteria must all be satisfied for a country to say it has an institutionalized party system. We can agree that here in Barbados, the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party contribute to that system, to those notions of what a political party system should entail, and therefore we can consider ourselves an entrenched party system. In the last election, 2018, the Democratic Labour Party and the Barbados Labour Party offered 30 candidates each. The New Solutions Party, the New Solutions Barbados announced a slate of 26 candidates. United Progressive Party presented a slate of 23 candidates. The People's Democratic Congress announced 3 candidates. The Coalition of United Parties, the Bajan Free Party, presented 3 candidates. And the Kingdom Government of Barbados presented 1 candidate. The Barbados Integrity Movement offered a total of 8 candidates, but BIM and CUT just prior to the election combined as a single party. There were also 8 independent candidates, making 2018 the most contested election in Barbados as it relates to candidates and parties. There were 36 women and 98 men contest 2018 election. And I am sure that another time, some student of politics will put sense to the attraction of so many contestants in the 2018 election. But for now, I will contend that party politics in Barbados remain alive. Yet, most people tend to be very critical of political parties. They tend to blame parties for all that is wrong before democracy and, of course, our political life. Parties have come to be identified as social and political divisions. Therefore, it is natural to ask, do we need political parties at all? About 200 years ago, there were few countries of the world that had a political party. Now there are very few that do not have parties. Why did political parties become so omnipresent in democracies all over the world? Let us first answer what political parties are and what they do. Political parties have changed from the classical typology that took its structure from the Western political environment that gave rise to the structure and ideological leaning of parties of Europe. Early party types focused on the nature of the membership and structure of the parties, and parties were seen as conservative, elitist, omnibus, mass-based, socialist, and communist. Many parties attached Democratic or Labour to the name following the movement called the Fabian Socialist Movement. In a paper, Species of Political Parties, a New Typology, Richard Gunther and Larry Diamond identified elite-based parties, mass-based parties, ethnicity-based parties, electoralist parties, and movement parties. They contain that 15 species of political parties now exist, but they can fit in the above 5 typologies that I gave. They contain that in the late 20th century, public opinion polling and focus groups have been increasingly employed, facilitating the crafting of ad hoc electoral appeals at the expense of long-standing ideological principles, programmatic commitments, and constituency interests. I want to read that again, that's very important. They contend that public polling and focus groups have been increasingly employed, facilitating the crafting of ad hoc electoral appeals at the expense of long-standing ideological principles, programmatic commitments, and constituency interests. Finally, they argue, and I quote him, fundamental features of mass culture and social structure have also changed profoundly in the late 20th century, where extreme economic inequality and high political salience of the class cleavage had declined in many countries, while new political conflicts growing out of post-materialist values had begun to affect partisan politics. The role of television has also had an impact. Use of television has systematically privileged the personalities of the party, particularly party leaders, over the presentation of party programs or ideology. At the same time, as it reduces the utility of mass membership as a vehicle for electoral mobilization. The individual who leads the party has become more critical now than the programs that we introduced. The ideological forces that drove the Barbados and the Labour Party, the Barbados and the Democratic Labour parties have now been engulfed by posters, advisors, and public relations specialists. Branch meetings attract very few members, and feedback from constituents come not from regular interaction with leaders and the general public, but from focus group sessions and opinion polls. Party manifestos have become regular tools at election time, and often, like is the case with this present disposition, are displaced by the pragmatism and self-interest of the leadership. It would be a disservice, however, to the science of political science to deny that political parties have contributed to the state of development of Barbados. However, the direction that the current Labour Party has allowed Prime Minister of Barbados to take them does not augur well for the Barbados party system. Electioneering has become big business, and the marketers don't come cheap. The costs are not only the dollars advanced at election time, but also the ties that the investment brings after the election. It's important that the election financing and spending be given some attention, in particular reform of our electoral and financing of elections must be done with proper legislation and regulations. In trying to value the contribution of political parties make to life, we need to really understand what politics is about and what makes politics the discipline that it is. The seminal work of Harold Laswell assigned to politics the claim that it is about who gets what, when, and how. Laswell was an elitist who believed that the power rested in the hands of the elite, but later moved to a more moralistic posture, calling for the social and biological sciences to reorient themselves toward the science of social policy that will serve the democratic will and justice. For Hofmeister and Gabon, it is about the process to organize how we live together in a society. The same authors in the paper, Political Parties, Functions, and Organization and Democratic Societies, contended that politics require ideas and values that set goals and standards of political organization. Principles include freedom, justice, and solidarity that can guide the political organization of any society, important for political parties. Politics requires social organization, including business and workers' associations, as well as other non-governmental organizations of the civic society to collect interests, aggregate, and communicate them to the political governmental institutions to make development a process of unity. Politics require institutions that collect proposals for organization of society and then present, discuss, and decide and implement them. Parliaments and governments, which normally rely on political parties, are the most important institutions of politics in a democratic society. I repeat that. Parliaments and government, which normally rely on political parties, are the most important institutions of politics in a democratic society. Most of all, in my view, politics require active citizens who take part in political decisions with ideas, demands, and expectations, and actively contribute to the functioning of political institutions. Phyllis Meiter makes the point that parties have historically played a role in reassuring losers. Parties in a democratic society have historically played a role in reassuring the losers. When the competition between them becomes so polarized, that this is not the case, then stability or even survival of real existing democracies becomes problematic. At every turn, Morley's brand of politics has undermined all our institutions. The treatment of the trade unions has been pushing the social partnership towards its grave. The Prime Minister has treated Parliament like her plaything, and the constant attacks on the official opposition is a clear sign of despotic behavior. She has controlled the media to the point that one opinion is heard. We have to be thankful that there is social media. Prime Minister Morley has treated the Barbados Labour Party as though it's her plaything. To shape it, use it, and discard it when she likes. Most of all, Prime Minister Morley has taken the leadership of Barbados at some moment in time not to build a nation of unity and strengthen democratic traditions, but to build an international profile and a legacy as a maximum leader. The rumor that there was a coup may have been just that, but it speaks to the disassembling of the base and structure of that party. It is true that parties who provide candidates in the hope that they can win elections, but they also design a political program. Hoffmeister says it's the merchandise of the party. The party programs fulfill two major functions. One, they articulate the interests of the population, that is, parties as organs of the people. Or secondly, they orient and influence the opinions of citizens, parties as formers of public will and intention. Through the party program voters can evaluate if a party has sufficient sensibility for societal problems and if they are able to propose adequate suggestions for the resolution of those problems. Political parties are the key mechanisms that make the democratic chain of political delegation and accountability work. Political parties fulfill a vital intermediate role between citizens and state, in which they are supposed to represent the citizens' interests and translate those interests into a policy agenda that responds to citizens' needs and concerns. The Democratic Labour Party, outside of office, has taken its time. It has assessed its base, strengthened its structure, and has been building an exciting program driven by interactions with the people in constituencies. The party is conscious of its responsibility and has recognized the threat to our democracy. Go back to Smith again. What if he says, the increasing negative characteristics within political parties are emerging that point to a decline in the significance of political parties, and I want to identify the points that Smith makes. He said there are less members and voluntary contributions of money, time, or labor, less citizens identified with political parties, more label themselves as independents, less consistent voting or volatility from election to election. He says there is less perceived differences between party programs and they more often converge towards the common center, less predictable electoral outcomes and lower margins of victory, with the difference being made by so-called swing voters that have the least partisan ID, more anti-party candidates with little or no previous history of the party. Even some candidates buy themselves into existing parties ex novo. More all-party governing coalitions and more above-the-party ministers and cabinets. In Barbados, we have witnessed all of the above, and even more. It has been said that in Britain, the difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party is very little. The same has been said of the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. I, however, contend, in the past, both parties agreed on more fundamental aspects, but differed mainly in details on how policies were to be framed and implemented. That was the past. Today, our government is defaulting on loans, ignoring the advice of its own experts, whether in the fight against the pandemic or on economic matters. Our government has all but destroyed the social partnership, the trade union movement, and damaged the image of the business sector. Our political system and our practice of democracy have been sustained by a party system from 1930s. Philip Smythe again has warned that the time when one's choice to join or identify with a particular political party also determine which newspaper we should read, what television station to listen to, what recreation center to use, what interest associations or social movements to participate in, or even one may be expected to marry, has long been over. In the multi-layered, polycentric polity, and I'm quoting him, that is today's Europe, it has become impossible to simplify one's political life in such a way. We have all different individuated identities from which we are constantly choosing depending on the issue that we are confronted with. Not even national identity suffices any longer as an exclusive overriding anchor for citizen expectations. End of quotation. As we move to embrace our republic, I offer this warning to all Barbadians. It is the capacity of leaders or parties with large majorities to manipulate symbols and memories in such a way that over time, individuals come to identify exclusively with one party or one person. The memory of a father of independence and the legacy of the Democratic Labour Party may be under threat. This party and Barbadians as a whole have a responsibility to ensure that both Errol Walton Barrow and the Democratic Labour Party survive the assault of Mia Morley and her administration. I thank you. Sorry to go so far. I'll take any questions, please. Any questions? Too fast? I will email some copies if anybody wants to read it. I will send the copies out. If there are no questions at this time, then hello? No questions?
We feel the same way you speak.
Sorry?
We feel the same way you spoke.
Okay.
You understand?
Thank you very much. We'll give the vote a thanks. It is just one in there. Just one that
All right, Bessie, good afternoon. After sitting listening to Derek, I first met Derek early 70s in some cricket. And Derek was always one of these guys that challenged you to think. A very deep thinker. So when I hear he became the graduate as a lawyer, as a doctor in this field, I was not surprised because he has that ability. And I just sit and listen to Derek today, and I remember the political party. Why is it necessary to have political parties? And I grew up in a church in St. Andrew, where from young, I would get involved in youth organizations. In fact, I started a couple of sports and social clubs in St. Andrew. And you always struggle to get help with these organizations. And that's when Joy Harris came along. That's what really introduced me to political parties, where you would go to the shopkeeper or the butcher or some person in the district that you know will have a little change and ask for a little donation to put on a little domino competition, cricket game, football competition, and for the ladies at netball. But then when you went to Joy Harris, a politician, and ask for help, you will not only get money, but you get a pass to play, some food, some drinks. So I decided that people know in those days we would say when you church and politician mix. And he said that no, my parents wouldn't want me to get involved in politics. At that time, we didn't know my old man was so wrapped in politics. But my old lady really who raised us didn't think it was a good thing. We had to explain to her the help that you get from this politician
I make me mind that I need to join a political party. That's why I make me decision to join the political party. So there, yes, I would say yes that political parties are necessary. There are times that people would want to look at the few people that got involved in politics probably for the wrong reasons. But the majority of people like believe that get involved in politics. People walk up and talk a lot of words about rich politicians and so on. I know for a fact I had a lot of friends that have been in politics for a long time. When they know in politics, they had to ask for some assistance. We all know that, but is this perception out there that people get involved, majority of people get involved in politics because they need money to rob and to thief and all that kind of thing. But as you may experience that is not the truth. So there, yes, and I enjoy your lecture this afternoon, and I hope that all of us are here, we have gained something from Dr. Alleyne. And we know that as we continue to listen to him and we get involved in this political organization, this political institution, that we will go forward and train because Barbados really needs this particular institution. Never mind what people will say happen over the last 30 years or so. We know there's a whole lot of good things that this institution has done. So I pray that God will continue to bless this institution and continue to provide my Dr. Brett Frank with all the knowledge and the clarity of thoughts that he will need to continue to help guide this party as the General Secretary. So this afternoon, Dr. Alleyne, we want to thank you, and we pray that you will continue to give us your insightful thoughts. We always read in your presentation and so on. I know you're a prolific writer also, so we pray that God will continue to bless you. And we want to thank each and every one of you for coming and hearing this presentation from Dr. Alleyne. Dr. Alleyne, once again, we want to thank you from the depths of my heart. Thank you.